The European Union consists of 28 member states that by means of rigorous negotiations arrive at joint decisions. However, at times it appears to the smaller states that their larger counterparts take the front seat in the decision-making process.
Today, Dukascopy TV talks to Edgars Rinkevics, the Republic of Latvia's Minister of Foreign Affairs. And in the first part in the interview, we're talking about how can smaller countries increase their influence and should they be looking for strategic alliances. Minister Rinkevics, thank you very much for seeing us today. It's a pleasure to be talking to you.
Nice to meet you too.
Now, the topic that we would like to focus on today is how smaller member states of the European Union can increase its influence, as many countries and many observers might say that Germany has more and more influence in the decision-making process, which from one standpoint could be fair as it is the largest economy, with the largest population in Europe, and its taxpayers' means were used to bail out numerous EU countries. Therefore, how can a small country like Latvia increase its influence as well as defend its own national interests?
I think that first of all, treaties governing the European Union have been designed in a very wise way. I think we have quite good checks and balances. Of course, we have countries of the size of Germany, France, Britain, Spain. They have their voting rights according to Lisbon Treaty, according to other governing treaties. At the same time, what we see also is that you don't have one country which can really get opinion or get policies the way this or that big country wants to see. We have, as I said, issues where you can vote in qualified majority, but there is also qualified minorities that can block decisions. And the best way how medium and small size countries can influence decision making within the European Union, and we have done that in the past, and I think that we are going to do that also in the future, is of course looking for groups or coalitions of countries that see that or another issue the same way. I think we had a very good example in 2011, 2012, actually also at the beginning of 2013 when we were, let's say, working on multi-annual financial framework or European budget for 2014-2020, and then we had a group of countries. Actually, we started as 13 members of the European Union, then our number grew to about 15, and that group was called Friends of Cohesion. So those countries that believe that cohesion policy of the European Union needs to be, let's say, increased or at least preserved at the level it used to be, let's say, in the previous financial perspective. So, and I think that through this coalition building, through this common interest, through cooperation with other countries, we have been able also to advance our national interests and also interests as a group. Of course, always there is an opportunity to use so-called veto right. But one thing that I have seen now working as Minister of Foreign Affairs and also being member of General Affairs Council of the European Union is that there is no point very often to threaten to use veto. The best way how you can really get your interests ahead is first of all negotiating, building coalitions, and trying to find the best compromise you can find. And what I have also seen, larger members of the European Union very often do not want to exercise an ultimate kind of pressure because they understand that things change and probably tomorrow you need to build coalition to advance another kind of set of interests.
Okay, now you mentioned the veto, of course, and many argue that it's in place to protect each state from having to undertake policies that might affect them negatively. Now, in Spain, for example, in the past, when they've threatened to veto, they've managed to actually head the regional monetary allocation. But in Ireland, they did a similar thing, threatened to veto regional policy, but it didn't get the same effect. Do you feel that a veto threat from a small state can actually be overlooked?
Well, I don't think so. I think that veto, of course, I would call it an ultimate weapon. Probably to some extent we can equal veto rights of countries to some kind of nuclear power of big countries like the United States or China or Russia. But let's face, the best way how you start to advance your interests and defend your interests, whatever is needed, is not when the issue gets on the table for ministers or heads of state and government to discuss. And actually, if something goes wrong there, that means that policy debate has been somewhere flawed. You start by the level of experts. You work tirelessly not only with other member states, actually you work a lot with Commission, you work with respective bodies, you also advance your point of view in the parliament if needed. And here you are referring actually to rather old examples back in 1990s. I would say that a lot has changed since Lisbon Treaty is in place, since 2009. We have got a bit different role for European Parliament. I would say that much depends on members of the European Parliament of, let's say, Latvia, when it comes to issues that are related to Latvia. And for instance, our members of European Parliament were very, I would say, in a positive way, aggressive and instrumental defending Latvian interest when it comes to common agriculture policy, when it comes to budgetary issues, when it comes to other issues where we see that there is an interest. Another issue is, of course, that we have actually decreased power of veto for countries. As I already mentioned, we have qualified majority or so-called qualified blocking minority. And that formula is rather complicated. It depends on both on a number of countries blocking, but also number of population proportionally to the EU overall population. So this is rather complicated. We have still issues where we can use veto power, particularly foreign security policy, also some basic issues when it comes to new legislative initiatives, of course budgetary issues and so on. But there are also a lot of regulations and directives where actually you are forced to negotiate, you are forced to build coalitions. And really to use threat of veto is already a rather serious thing. Almost all countries try not to invoke this kind of ultimate weapon. And not only small countries, also countries like Germany, France, United Kingdom, very rarely, in recent times at least, have been kind of saying that no, this is not acceptable to us.
Now, to pursue one's goals, many smaller member states formed alliances with other EU countries. For example, Austria, Belgium, Ireland and Estonia were critical leaders in their contributions to the common security and defense policy missions. So, considering that example, is Latvia looking for strategic agreements with other countries sharing common goals and ideas? And if so, what are those countries and what goals should be targeted?
I think to some extent, of course, our strategic partnerships within the European Union are very much related to our regional setting, and naturally a lot of issues we are tackling, we coordinate with countries like Germany, like Poland, of course our Scandinavian neighbors, our Baltic neighbors. Before every Foreign Affairs Council, we have coordination meetings at the level of Baltic Nordic countries where we actually exchange views. Sometimes, of course, we have different views, but at least we try to discuss them and coordinate on almost every single agenda item for Foreign Affairs Council. We have also various regional settings, Nordic-Baltic meetings of foreign ministers, of prime ministers. We have Germany plus Baltic states foreign affairs ministers meetings as well. We work also now with the United Kingdom Northern Forum, where United Kingdom, Baltic states and Nordic states come together and discuss issues. So you see there are various frameworks. One thing that I can say now, and we are also trying to get, let's say, much more active when it comes to common foreign and security policy, common defense and security policy, is that we have found also, I think, a good way forward to build a strategic partnership with France. It comes to both operations currently run by the European Union, Mali and Central African Republic, and I think that this is a new way where you can see also strategic partnership in a security policy forming. Nordic, Baltic, Germany, Poland, actually we have broad issues to discuss and to cover. Having said that, I would certainly say that I wouldn't see this as a kind of Nordic faction or Nordic, Baltic, German faction against, let's say, southern members of the European Union. We are increasingly finding also issues where our views are actually the same, almost quality is with our friends in the southern part of Europe. And for instance, one good example is that now when Latvia is going to take over EU presidency in the first half of 2015, the previous presidency is Italy, and after us we have Luxembourg. So actually through also this very practical work on presidency issues, we get more interaction with countries like Italy. I hope also that we'll be able to broaden a little bit such kind of cooperation with other countries within the European Union. However, of course, one most interesting thing I was already referring to the group of Friends of Cohesion is that actually that group consisted of countries in the northern and in the southern parts of European Union. So we had Greece, Cyprus, and Bulgaria, and Romania, and Baltic states sitting around the same table and working through our common positions versus so-called friends of better spending countries, where we had also our Nordic neighbors working with Germany and some other countries, so-called donor countries of the European Union. So we have our strategic, let's say, partnerships very much based on regional setting, but also on common interest. And now we see increasingly also that we are finding friends and partners also on issues where usually probably our cooperation have not been so tight in other regions of EU.
Well, that was Edgars Rinkevics, the Republic of Latvia's Minister of Foreign Affairs, discussing the importance of smaller states in the European Union.
For more exclusive interviews and top headlines, stay tuned to Dukascopy TV.